Well,
Does Israel get a license to do whatever it wants?
I think Piers Morgan talked to way too many pro-Palestinian voices, bro. I swear to God. Maybe at some point he was like, yeah, no, these guys, this is good for my clout. But he talked to one too many pro-Palestinian activists and speakers, myself included. And now he's like, I'm confused as to what's going on. Anyway, let's get to Jordan. Apparently, he's very upset that he's losing his Muslim followers or something because he's constantly chirping Palestinians, chirping at Palestinians, saying Israel should give him hell.
I'm joined now by Dr. Jordan Peterson. Jordan, great to have you back on the program. A lot has happened since you were last on just a few weeks ago. I want to start by saying that I'm wrestling with a lot of moral quandaries about this war. And I'm hoping that through our conversation today, we might get to at least have some clarity about the moral quandaries and see if we can work out what we should be thinking about this, because I think it's very complicated and it's got to be nuanced, this conversation. Do you feel any moral quandaries about it?
well, I don't think you can have a war without moral quandary. I mean, a war is the consequence of an unsolvable moral quandary. And so it's not surprising that the conversation surrounding the war is full of moral quandaries, because if it was straightforward and simple, and if there was an easy path forward, then there wouldn't be a war. And so, I mean, I can tell you what I think is going on to the degree that you can reduce it to something quickly explicable.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Jordan Peterson, when a trans person exists in fucking Western college. This constitutes the gravest threat to Western civilization of all time. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. Trans students are engaging in the most horrifying, deadly, massacrous ideology of postmodernist neo-Marxism. Jordan Peterson, when Israel has slaughtered fucking 3,000 children in the most expeditious way possible in a matter of 3 weeks, while the moral quandaries are quite difficult to grasp with, the dragon of chaos will come for you if you make a fast assumption on Israel's apartheid regime. Who could say if this apartheid is justifiable or not? The fuck? This guy literally goes, this dude, okay, has a fucking aneurysm when the green M&M is not fuckable any longer. But when it comes to just like talking about, again, an ethnic cleansing campaign that's happening in front of our eyes, that all of the Western leaders are refusing to listen to their fucking listen to their fucking voters on, as there's mass protests happening everywhere demanding ceasefires. He's like, who could tell who's in the right and who's in the wrong? It's complicated.
I think Iran is desperate because of the tenuous hold on power that the mullahs now have in Iran, given their own citizens' rebellion. I think they see the Abraham Accords, which were the most significant step forward towards peace in the...
Yeah, totally. That's why October 7 happened also simultaneously. Yeah, no. Famously, Palestinian liberation has always reacted really quietly and perfectly fine whenever they get totally cut out of the conversation. Yeah, nothing keeps the region safe like allowing Israel to maintain its apartheid regime, basically solidifying the pre-existing partnerships that these Gulf nation states already had as CIA client states with Israel.
In the Middle East for like 75 years, they see the Abraham Accords as an existential threat. This is a last-ditch attempt by the Iranian mullahs to use the Islam against Jews story to prop up their own dismal reign. And so they rattled the chain of their Hamas puppets and said, provoke, and they did. And their hope is that the Israeli response will be so overwhelming that the Arab world turns against them, and maybe even the people who might be inclined to be swayed by a victim narrative in the West, and that the Abraham Accords...
The victim narrative? I mean, he's having this conversation right now. It's not October 8th. He's having this conversation on October 31st, okay? At 3 p.m. American time. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. And Jordan Peterson is having this conversation after 4,000 or 3,000 children have been fucking slaughtered. Like, oh, they're gonna, the world will see a victim narrative. What a ridiculous fucking thing to say. The world will see Palestinians. Oh no, the world might see Palestinians as victims, when in fact the real victims of society are men that are being told that they can't have sex with women, men that are being rejected when they want to go on dates, women wearing makeup. That's the real blight.
To fall apart, and that'll be the end of that, and that could happen, and I'm hoping it won't, because I think the Abraham Accords were...
I'm hoping it won't.
It's irritating to me, for whatever utility that is that I think I know, insofar as you can know such things, that Saudi Arabia would have signed the Abraham Accords 2 years ago if Biden would have moved a little bit more forthrightly on it. And I think...
Like, you want to know how fucking stupid he is? One, Saudi Arabia and Israel have already normalized relations in anything but on paper, okay? For years. They have the same regional adversary, Iran. So a person who is so supposedly knowledgeable on the matter should probably know that already. That's number one. Number two, Saudi Arabia already has told the United States, well, one, they're intercepting Yemen, rocket fire coming from Yemen in the direction of Israel already. And two, they already told America that they are going to continue with normalizing relations with Israel once things quiet down. But you would already know that if you fucking knew anything about these regional actors and their long history with one another.
I think the reason that he didn't and the Democrats didn't was because they didn't want to give Trump any credit for anything that he had attained in his administration. And I think all of that is appalling. And,
I love that Jordan Peterson gets uninterrupted 56-minute conversation. But God forbid I try to fucking explain something on an issue that I'm knowledgeable on. Holy moly.
I see this story of Muslim against Jew being put forward in this propagandistic manner. And I think, well, the Muslim world has to make a choice too, because it doesn't look to me like their proper champions is the government in Iran, and it's not like the Saudis don't have their flaws, and perhaps the rest of the Arab governmental structures, but
he's like, he still can't hand it to the Muslims, dude. He's like, make no mistake, the Muslims are bad. They're bad.
The Islam world should move in the direction of the Abraham Accords. That would be great for everyone. We could have a real peace. We could have something approximating a union of the Abrahamic people, and I think the accord was named extraordinarily well. Or we could have what we've had for the last 75 years with the Palestinians as perpetual cannon fodder, at the beck and call of those for whom having them be cannon fodder is useful. And so, there's just moral quandaries everywhere there. It's a minefield, but that's what I think is the fundamental reality of the current situation. It's a propaganda war. And
it's so funny. Yeah, man. The greatest threat there is the fucking Gulf nation states at least aesthetically criticizing Israel whenever they engage in yet another fucking pogrom. That's the gravest threat to regional security, and not the fact that Israel has an apartheid state. Israel is an apartheid state. This is inherently a violent position. The maintenance of an apartheid state requires a tremendous amount of violence, increasing violence year over year. Israel is trying to ethnically cleanse the West Bank. Israel has taken over more and more territory in the West Bank. That is the big problem here. That is the big problem morally. That is the big problem from a legal perspective. That is the main problem. That's the only problem, as a matter of fact, because most of this other shit would not occur if Israel did not have an apartheid state. 50 plus years of Israel building settlements in territory that is supposed to be Palestinians and maintaining said settlements is a major problem. It's a major issue. Denying the right to return to Palestinians. 6 million of them are refugees in diaspora, generational refugee status in diaspora. Denying them a right to return to their homes is a major human rights catastrophe.
There's a lot at stake.
On October the 7th, Hamas obviously committed.
When you say the problem is propaganda or the problem is regional actors here and their response to this level of death and destruction, you are quite literally openly admitting you don't give a fuck about what happens to the Palestinians. You only care if people get mad at it. You only care when people actually see what's going on with respect to the Palestinian plight and get upset and want to say, no, enough is enough. We have to stop.
A terror attack of appalling magnitude. Where were you when you first heard about it? And what was your instant feeling about it?
Well, my instant feeling was to be sickened by it, you know, and it hasn't been that long since I was in Jerusalem, and so it was a little closer to me than it might have otherwise been. I'm also more sensitive to any signs of anti-Semitic catastrophe from studying the Holocaust for the length of time that I did, and I've always regarded Jews as the canary in the coal mine, and I think the reason that the Jews are the canary in the coal mine is because they're a successful minority. You know, and if a culture can tolerate a successful minority, it's pretty damn robust and it's not very resentful. And as soon as a culture starts to get resentful, the Jews make an easy target because they're a minority, and so that's an easy target to begin with, but then they're the minority that has the temerity to be successful. And that really brings the resentful out of the rat holes. And I've seen a rise in anti-Semitism online over the last 3 years.
I hate that, like, he's using real... No, guys, before you say this is actually anti-Semitism, no, this is no, this is correct. What he's saying is correct. What he's saying is reductive, but it's fucking correct. Historically speaking, this is precisely what has happened in times of economic instability. I talked about it yesterday as well. Okay? Economic volatility creates a chaotic environment where people immediately look for a villain, and the villain always historically is Jews. Okay? He's not wrong on this, but what should perhaps give you a better understanding or reframe your perspective is the fact that this dude who openly repeats neo-Nazi propaganda, claiming that the Great Replacement is happening, claiming that there are, there's cultural Marxism occurring in college campuses that is actually rotting the morally superior Western world to its core. These are things that Nazis have said. He has repeated this Nazi propaganda in contemporary society time and time again. That guy is making a correct assessment on anti-Semitism and then literally changing the dynamic and using it. He's weaponizing anti-Semitism to justify Israel's actions.
It's just stunning to behold on the right and on the left, but jointly. And then, so I was sickened by it, but then I was also immediately suspicious of Iran's role. And I mean, that doesn't require any particular perspicacity on my part. I think it's quite obvious, but that also opens up the rat's nest of the maneuvering, the political maneuvering around the Abraham Accords, because, you know, I was very ill when the Abraham Accords were signed, and I couldn't or hadn't paid much attention. And when I sort of recovered my ability to see again, I saw that this remarkable peace process had taken place, and I could not understand for the life of me why it wasn't trumpeted on the front page of every news.
Yeah, I wonder why, dude. I wonder why a peace process that quite literally, demonstrably caused, at least a little bit, caused the chaos that is unfolding, that played a role in this chaos unfolding. Yeah, just read a fucking newspaper, man. Read an Israeli newspaper, please. Read Haaretz or something. Maybe you will develop a better understanding of what the fuck is going on. But it is a consequence of the apartheid regime and a real refusal to meet the Palestinians as human beings, as equal partners. Okay, openly denying them their humanity and continuing to strangle them A peace process where one part is not present. What a joke. Exactly. You can't, like, I'll give you a Nazi Germany argument here, okay? Like, this is like saying appeasement caused peace for everyone and stability in the region, and that the Germans should have been allowed to continue taking additional territory to create living room, to create living space. It is identical. It is identical to say this. I cannot believe why every newspaper is not talking about appeasement. I cannot comprehend why every newspaper is not talking about appeasement nonstop. The reality, of course, is that if Nazis had kept it specifically to ethnically cleansing and targeting Jewish people and Romani people and trade unionists and communists, and they didn't actually have colonial ambitions beyond that, imperialist ambitions beyond that, who knows? Maybe the world would have kept it going. Maybe the world would have literally been like, yeah, fuck it, like YOLO, we should do our own, actually. We love what you're doing. Make no mistake, nobody fucking went to war because they wanted to save Jewish people, okay? That is not the reality at all of no matter how hard people try to explain how honorable and unjust every single actor was during World War II. It was not. It was not because of the camps.
Newspaper across the world. And I also think that Trump's team should have got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. I cannot see how you could possibly make a counter-argument to that for all of Trump's flaws and for his administration's flaws. This was a major accomplishment. And yet, and I know the Saudis were behind it. You know, they didn't sign it, but it wouldn't have gone forward without their nod and wink. And I believe, that if Biden would have taken the opportunity and been a bit magnanimous in his...
Chat, for those of you who don't know, like, I mean, I guess maybe you don't know, but like, we've literally turned boats full of Jewish refugees away, okay? Here in the United States of America, we said, no, fuck off. The Jews escaping Nazi Germany, okay? Like, escaping Europe. Ever let anyone fucking tell you that America was joined World War II? I mean, FDR was not the worst when it came to World War II. I will admit that. But ultimately, like, the overarching American ambition, it took a lot. It took America to be attacked for us to even join the battle.
His response to Trump, which he could have been, instead of thinking of him as Satan himself, that he could have enticed the Saudis into a peace accord. And we wouldn't be in this damn situation now. And now we're playing it out the hard way, you know, because the Iranians could win the propaganda war, and they've got, God only knows how many agents they have in the West, you know,
what? Promoting
the kind of social upheaval that we've seen on the streets in the last few weeks. And so the narrative could go either way.
Yeah, dude, it has to be. I mean, this is the same exact shit that, like, people always say about, like, the Arab Spring and whatever, right? Okay? I will admit readily that there is always enough volatility on the ground. You cannot just materialize protests out of nowhere. I know a lot of lefties will love saying, for example, that, like, every single protest that happens globally, like whether it be the Hong Kong protests or whether it be protests in other places, like, these are all inventions of the American State Department. It's like, no, obviously there are real fucking people. Okay, these are real people who are genuinely fearful. And there are examples of where it doesn't work, like Cuba, right? Because there are examples of these protests not working, like in Cuba, where they try to fucking present it in a certain way. So the idea that, like, there isn't actual real instability on the ground and people who have a genuine desire to, like, protest against their government is completely fucking incorrect. And just like the fact that Jordan Peterson thinks that Iran is responsible for the fucking mass mobilization that we are seeing is completely idiotic. It's so utterly laughable. Yeah, dude, Iran is responsible for 500,000 British people taking it up to the fucking streets. And not because they fucking see what is going on. Not because they have seen the numbers and think the unimaginable cruelty that befalls the Palestinians is unacceptable. Nah, it's Iran, And also anti-Semitism. That's the guiding principle here.
way. But I'm rooting hard for the Abraham Accords signees, and I hope they have the courage of their convictions, and I hope they can see that their way forward is the most appropriate way forward for the good of the Muslim world. Or what, are we going to stay in some 14th century conflict between the fundamentalist Muslim world and the Jews? Jesus, that sounds, we've had enough of that, haven't we? You'd think.
14th century fundamentalist Muslim conflict? Bitch, that's your own people, you fucking asshole. What do you mean? Aren't you like a Christian supremacist? 14th century pogroms and shit is still up to the Muslims at that point? Muslims were doing that? You fucking asshole. Another laughably ahistorical, nonsensical fucking take.
I asked Ben Shapiro, what is a proportionate response to what happened on October the 7th? And he said there isn't one. That there is no proportionate response, and there shouldn't be. That in itself, I asked Vivek Ramaswamy.
If he's talking about if he's talking about the Crusades, then the fuck does that have to do with Muslims versus Jews? What do you mean?
When I interviewed him at the weekend, the same question, and he was basically inferring the same, but he also said that he would happily put the heads of 100 Hamas leaders on stakes along the border as a message to people not to commit this act. I thought that was a sort of medieval barbaric response to medieval barbarism, and that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is not the solution. I also believe that Israel has a fundamental right not just to defend itself after what happened, but has a duty to protect its people. And it has to take that duty obviously very seriously. But if your mission statement, as they've made clear, is to eliminate Hamas completely, and Hamas live in Gaza surrounded by civilians, among civilians, you can only do that. You can only get rid of Hamas with massive civilian casualties. And that's where I have this moral quandary about how much is too much.
Well,
does Israel get a license to do whatever it wants?
I think Piers Morgan talked to way too many pro-Palestinian voices, bro. I swear to God. Maybe at some point he was like, yeah, no, fuck these guys. This is good for my clout. But he talked to one too many pro-Palestinian activists and speakers, myself included. And now he's like, I'm confused as to what's going on.
To eliminate Hamas, or should there be a limit? And if so, what is that limit?
Well, I don't think Israel will have a license to do whatever it wants, because what will happen inevitably, and I think if I was an Iranian propagandist, I would be counting on this. Let's imagine that Israel moves against Hamas with its usual effectiveness, and they start winning, in a serious way, and the casualties mount. Well, it's a lot easier to take a victim appreciation stance against a power that's clearly winning. So Israel can't win without accruing losses along the way, because the more they manifest their military superiority, the easier it's going to be for those who cast the Palestinians as victims to gain the moral upper hand.
I can't believe he's using so many fucking different words to basically say that the more Israel kills babies, the more the world is going to get mad at Israel killing children. Okay? The problem is not, of course, Israel killing children. The problem in this circumstance is the world recognizing that Israel's killing children and getting mad at it. Okay? Oh no, don't stop the baby murder. It's just that the world might start seeing the baby murder and get mad at it. I am more upset about the optics, the bad optics of the baby murder.
And that doesn't mean I know what Israel should do, because I wish I had that wisdom. But what I would like to see happen, in the best of all possible worlds perhaps, would be for the signees of the Abraham Accords to say to Israel, privately first, we're not budging. And then maybe to take a foray into the public and say that. It would be lovely to see Saudi Arabia come out and say, we're going to continue the Abraham Peace Accord process. And then Israel could say, well, if the Abraham Accord holds and we have the probability of expanding it, we can take the risk of not being so devastating in our response to Hamas, and they could back off, but because there'd be a counter victory in it for them. And so as far, like, I can't see a better pathway forward than that, and I think that's a potentially realistic pathway, especially because that would also have the side benefit of not allowing Iran to prevail. So that's
like, the funniest part about what he's saying is that I don't completely disagree with him, because if your goal is to undermine Iranian influence in the region, and I personally don't give a shit one way or the other, I just want people to stop suffering, right? But if your goal is to undermine Iranian influence in the region, if that is your strategic goal, okay, and that is certainly America's strategic goal, then you have to take away a calling card that will undermine Israel's defenses and Israel's security in the region, okay? Yeah, we know you have no idea what's going on. Thank you. Yeah, totally. I definitely don't know what's going on. Anyway, actually, I don't know why you banned that guy, because I would love to hear what he thinks I don't know about what is going on, and how he can tell me over the course of many years, they will finally get to the point where, like, Israel has to have an apartheid state. His name literally says is banned. Mods were right. Oh, did he mean Jordan? I don't know. Anyway, my point was this. If your goal is to undermine Iran in the region, if your goal is to then you need to take away one of Iran's tools. It's not necessarily just the Abrahamic Accords. It's also to stop. It's also to basically stop allowing Iran to be able to use Hamas or any kind of Palestinian group, any kind of Palestinian militancy against Israel. So technically, he's not wrong in the sense that Iran uses Hamas as a destabilizing force against Israel, which it sees as a continuation of America, the region. But the best path forward in this circumstance is not to continue bombing the shit out of Gaza. To continue bombing the shit out of Gaza. The thing to do in this circumstance is to move in the exact opposite direction. Peace assurances, security commitments, allowing Palestinians to live with dignity, so that there is no more air that can be. There's no more oxygen for Hamas to exist.
That's the best I can do on how this might proceed.
You cannot do that without ending the apartheid.
Most optimistic possible way. And I don't know if that's good enough or not.
On October the 7th, you tweeted, "Give them hell, Netanyahu, enough is enough," and you got some blowback for that, as everybody
a lot
says anything about this. Were you surprised by the scale of the blowback? Do you wish you'd phrased that tweet differently? Do you have any regrets about it?
Well, you know, Twitter is a very complicated social media platform, and it's been difficult for me to learn how to use it wisely. And I'm not alone in that, because it's difficult to be wise on Twitter. Now, what I'm trying to learn is when a tweet is appropriate and when a long-form commentary is appropriate. And the rule, I think, is something like the higher the stakes, the more likely that the long-form commentary is necessary. And really, it would have been better had because I did release a YouTube video where I explained some of what we already talked about.
I saw it,
and that was received much better. Let's put it that way.
Thanks, man. Thanks for explaining your position of give him hell, kill more babies, more baby blood, please.
But it also gave me a chance to elaborate my argument. And so what it highlighted for me, and I felt, I was very taken aback by what happened in Israel. And I was also appalled because in my estimation, it was unnecessary. As I said, the Abraham Accords could have been extended earlier, and maybe this wouldn't have been necessary. And so I allowed myself to express some sentiment at that point without providing context. And that wasn't as good as providing the context. And so, and I'm rethinking Twitter overall at the moment about how to use it. You know, Elon has taken off the character limit, and he's also made it possible to distribute video. And so it no longer has to be a place where impulsive exchanges can occur rapidly. And I'm trying to reconfigure how I use it. I'm much happier with the video. Now, you know, I was upset because I had developed somewhat of a Muslim following on YouTube, and I was very happy about that. A lot of people on the Islamic side of the world were watching my biblical lectures, for example, and you know, and I've had extensive conversations with Muslims on my YouTube channel. And you know, I burnt some of that up, and I'm not sure I did that. Well, I would say I'm certain I didn't do that in the most productive manner. And so, do I regret it? It would have been better to do the long form, to have done the long form to begin with, you know? And Twitter invites and rewards a certain amount of impulsivity, and it wasn't, I don't know, Piers, I don't know if it's ever time for impulsive action, especially when the stakes are serious, you know?
Yeah,
And
so
so,
I completely get that. I mean, there's no doubt, for example, that what happened on October the 7th was a form of hell for the victims and for their families. There's also no doubt that for...
Okay, I can't, I'm, is there parts of this that get like more interesting? Because like the reality is hearing Jordan Peterson be like, give him hell is not shocking to me at all. That's what I expected from him anyway. You know what I mean? Scroll to 69, good one, dude. I don't understand. Is he just losing followers and upset by it? So Jordan Peterson had a big following in the Muslim world. Part of the reason why he had a big following in the Muslim world was because, let's be real, there's, you know, misogyny everywhere, and it certainly exists in the Muslim world as well. Conservative Muslims loved him. They loved an American guy, an American trad guy, repeating shit that they fucking believe. Now, this doesn't mean the entirety of the Muslim world loved him. Okay? Of course. I'm not American, sorry, Canadian, whatever. They loved it. But then, when his attitude came out about or his like willingness to openly champion the death and destruction of Palestinians was recognized by some in his following, and then they were like, okay, yeah, this guy fucking sucks. He's just like everybody else, you know? Andrew Tate Muslim stands have been mad quiet. Bro, I don't even remember who Andrew Tate is at this point. Does he still fucking do stuff? Does he even say shit? I don't know, but I mean, I don't know. Is he pro-Israel? I doubt it. I think Andrew Tate doesn't give a fuck. He can just say whatever the fuck. He got into beef with Ben. Oh God, I don't care.